How are you?
Welcome.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everybody to Lakeview School Meeting for February 12th, 2020. Approval amendment of meeting agenda items.
We have a late on it, and I'm going to put it down as 7.1. Have the introduction of the Rotary Exchange students, so we're going to let Mr. Rose get into and introduce that when we get to that item. So.
Okay.
I move to approve the board meeting items for February 12th, 2020 as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the amended board meeting agenda items for February 12th, 2020 as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of January 29th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for January 29th, 2020 as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Correspondence.
Have none, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Public comment. Hearing none. 7.1. Mr. Rose.
Sure. Okay, well, we'd like to welcome tonight Robbie McGowan, and she has organized, she's the facilitator for the Rotary Exchange Student Program. And with us tonight is our exchange student from Spain. This is Carlota Rey. And Carlota is from Spain. She's living with Tom and Shelley Batty here in town. They run the Tall Town Bike and Camp, and are just great people. In fact, they volunteered at our senior prom night event last year. Stayed up all night with some of us and hung out at the bowling alley. So Tom and Shelley are really great, and I know they're excited to have Carlota. So, would you like to say something?
Terrific. Well, would you like to say something first, and then I would love to say something.
Okay, so thank you so much to the school and to all the people of Lakeview, because I'm so happy here and I'm so glad to stay in Lakeview because I really like it and I like so much the people here. I'm going to miss it a lot.
I'd just like to say a few words about the Rotary Youth Services that we have. And one of the things that I'm very excited about, because Carlota is one of our inbound students, but Rotary also has the opportunity to provide outbound experiences for our local students. So we have long-term academic year experiences, and we have a short-term summer direct exchange experience where a student from here would go abroad for 3 to 4 weeks and live with a family, and then one of the siblings in that family would come back to Lakeview and live with that family for 3 to 4 weeks. So it's an 8 to 12 week experience in the summer, and it's really wonderful, as well as the academic year abroad. We also have for sophomores, right after the sophomore year, the Rotary Youth Leadership Award, which is an amazing leadership camp held in the summer for 5 days. It's run by professionals. I've been lucky enough to observe for a couple of days, and it is magnificent. I mean, it is really, really fabulous. And it's for students who have shown that they are leaders, and also for students who have leadership capabilities that perhaps have not yet been tapped. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and I will be talking to all the sophomores shortly. The other thing that we do provide is a $2,500 vocational scholarship to any student who has been admitted to a 2-year vocational program, and this can also be extended to the second year. Currently, Mark Lee has received that scholarship for 2 years in a row. And lastly, I would like to talk about briefly, we have a fundraiser coming up on February 29th. It's called Leap for Youth. February 29th, Leap for Youth, okay. All of the proceeds will be going for our youth programs, and we will be auctioning off experiences and services. So it's going to be something a little bit different, and I think there's some really exciting things. It's going to be at the Alger Theater and at the south end of the KBE building. So there's going to be a silent auction and food and drink, and then the live auction will be in the Alger Theater. And it should be very, very exciting, and like I said, everything will go towards youth services. So thank you very much. And did you want to say anything?
Is that what I volunteered for?
I believe you're
Yes,
being
that is it. We're hoping to get some students involved also.
I just,
Okay.
yeah, I had a question. What are the costs involved with exchange programs? Are they fairly accessible for all students?
You know, I think I've been involved in international exchange for decades, and the Rotary Exchange Program is absolutely, because of all of the volunteers involved, an amazing opportunity. Probably for a year program total with allowance and visa and passport and everything like that, it would not be much more than $8,000, and that includes airfare and orientations and allowance and insurance and everything. The summer program is $350 administration fee, and then the family has to provide the flight to and from, and that can be done, miles or whatever. And then, of course, hosting the guest student when they come back to, and that's also financial.
So, and but then that helps on the other end, right?
Absolutely.
So their child is being taken care of and fed, and then you.
Exactly, exactly. And, it's something that we're hoping we make a lot of money on February 29th so that we can possibly offer some scholarship assistance to kids who might want to study abroad. And there will also be mentorship for fundraising opportunities and that kind of thing.
It gets a lot more expensive when you get into college. I know I did it in college, not high school, but it's higher than that. And who knows what it is now 20 years later. So
Oh, yeah.
it's a good, take advantage of that versus
We
what you're getting
really
into
hope.
later
I
down the
had a meeting this year, 6 students expressed an interest in studying abroad, and when all was said and done, none of them proceeded with it. I think the hosting, they were keen to go abroad, but I think we need to do a little bit more educating on the families because they weren't so keen to then have somebody come and live with them for whatever reason. So I just letting people know.
But there's different options.
There's a lot of different options, and I certainly hope that our students will take advantage of those options. Carlota is the first Rotary Exchange student here in 15 years, so we're delighted about that. The Rotary Club has decided to host another student next year, thanks to Miss Carlota, but we are still looking for host families. The Rotary model is to place the student within 2 to 4 families in a year so that a family doesn't have the burden of the entire year. But we're just, we talk to the families and we talk to the students, and this year it just worked out perfectly that the baddies were willing to host for a year, and Carlota loves staying with them. So.
Carlota, were you able to pick Lakeview, or did you not have a choice?
No, I don't have a choice.
So tell them how big your town is.
So Madrid is so big, and when I choose, so with Rotary you choose 3 countries, and I choose United States, Canada, and Australia. So first choose United States, and later the state like Oregon, and later Lakeview. So when I see Lakeview, I almost cry because it's so small. but it was good.
And it has a ski hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you've played sports here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A
That's
lot.
really great. She's been involved with a couple of seasons.
How long have you been here then?
Whole year?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Very cool.
Any other questions or comments or anything?
Well, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
We're
Thank
glad
you.
to have you.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you
Very
very
much for the
Appreciate
opportunity.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Rotary.
it. We're gonna scoot it since she didn't get in until about 3:30 in the morning from her basketball trip yesterday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of your year.
All right. Guess we'll call the next one 7.2, bonds.
Yeah.
So that is Janet and myself. We attended a conference last Friday called Bonds, Ballots, and Buildings in Salem at the Convention Center. We split it up, and Janet went to 3 conferences, and I went to 3 different conferences. Started at 9. Well, it started in the morning early, but first we had a guest speaker, I guess, and opening remarks. But the first conferences started at 9:45, and they ended about 3:30 on Friday. So Janet and I, we talked about this. I'll give you what I went to first. First one I went to was called Build a Communications Plan. A goal without a plan is just a wish. And this was ran by a lady who helped Bend Public Schools get a bond. And she was very energetic and did an awesome job. Just some quick takeaways from it. I took lots of notes, and this is just the highlights, but if you focus on a specific building, it probably will fail. So what they were really emphasizing is a little bit for everybody. Every building has something that it gets. Know your audience, know who votes. Younger voters tend to vote yes. So there was a lot of studies that they do on their voters. There's information that you can get on voters. I think they were really focusing on 4x4 voters, voters who have voted in the last 4 elections. Tend to be more in tune with what you got going on and tend to be yes voters more often than not. They emphasized to have people that endorsed it, some key people in your community, past superintendents, some key person boards in the community with a neutral message stating what you can get with the bond. We gave an example. Let's use Union Elementary for example. It was built in 1912, and then also state what else was going on in 1912. You know, and where we're at since 1912. So you could you could change it up from all the different buildings. So our newest building, 1962, Will, for high school.
High school, yeah.
So what was going on in 1962? You know, so that just kind of gives people an idea of how old our buildings really are. They emphasized that they didn't want to activate the no voters. So if you had something that was, was catching their eye, you probably needed to move away from that as a talking point. They didn't really get into what that would be, though. They gave an example of a 100-day campaign and gave us the whole how-to. So if we were to put this on the ballot in November, if you go back 100 days, every day should have something that talks about the bond and why it's important and giving a message. And then the second one I went to was Clackamas School District, and they had first time they did a bond, it failed with only 36% voting yes, and they turned that around to 63% saying yes on the next time around.
How far apart in years between the 2 votes? Do you remember?
I think it was just like 2 years, something like that, or it may have been less. I'd have to look it up. But what they did the first time, what they heard a lot was this community just can't afford a school bond. And they heard a lot of that, you know, a lot of negatives and whatnot. They had a philosophy that was a little bit interesting, and so it was form the band, take it on the road, and create a hit single. And as far as forming the band, that was talking about, you know, getting your superintendent, an architect firm, a PR firm, outside facilitator, operations, communications, support staff, and somebody on the board who's championing it. That's what they used. And I know that's a lot more than we would probably ever do here, but it's just an idea of what they did. They did mention that sports facilities is not a winning topic. So if you're pushing for a certain type of sports facility, it's usually not in the top 4 or 5 things that yes voters are looking for. Take it on the road. So, you know, listen to your fans. Listen to everything, every negative, every positive. Write it down. Study it. You know, what are they willing to pay for at this rate? Things like that. One of the things that they gave in as example, we were willing to pay for this at this rate, but nothing really inspires me. So if we're just fixing roofs and replacing windows and painting the wall, I'm not sure that inspires very many people. And they found that it just wasn't. It was hard to get people excited about that. Let's see here. So then they went on a future tour, and that time around they said, you know, go big. And they listened to their fans some more, and then their fans says, well, maybe not that big. So, you know, that's a really big type of bond, especially if you think about Clackamas School District. We're talking $100-some million. They didn't go that big.
They say they primarily targeted.
They stuck to 3 messages, and that was overcrowding, safety, and security. So they went back to the studio and got on the same page, kind of boiled it all down to, and then they created a hit single. They wanted to make sure that every there was a chicken in every building. So every building was talked about. Every bit had something that was going to gain from a bond. They made sure that they could fulfill the promises they made, and safety and security improvements, reduce overcrowding, and update and upgrade schools. They kept the bond facts. One thing that they said was look for a school that is similar to us in how they were successful in their bond and what did they do. So if there's a school out there that maybe we're like, man, I wish we could be like them and get these upgrades, things like that. You know, that was something to compare to. They also talked about doing a video. We got to see a video in the opening speech, and it was done by a student, you know, with a cell phone. Bragged about what was good about their school, but then it also showed the hole in the ceiling, you know, or the track that had a rut right through the middle of it, and windows that had leaks going on in them. You know, said, you know, hey, we've got some real problems here. And I think a lot of times visual people do well with seeing things like that. And that is that. And then the last one I went to was once you get your bond, what do you do? And I'm going to not talk too much about that because that was a lot of legal stuff. You know,
let Janet take over.
Well, like Barry said, we split it up and went to different things. So I guess coming out of this, what struck me the most probably was the real need to have active board leadership and be active, be within it. Staff commitment and student commitment was other keys that I picked up on. The other thing that I didn't think about as the principals and that were forming the steering committee is Chamber of Commerce, which I don't know why I didn't think about this because Jessica Bogartis is everywhere. So I wrote her name down, that she might be a possibility to help us get that kind of campaigned out through the chamber. A lot of it was vision for the schools. So whatever the community has envisioned for your schools, that's probably where you need to lead to. Let's see. Barry touched upon what was happening. What was the circumstances in 1962 to build the educational buildings the way they were, or the way they were built. That was a key thing to it, with what it was at the time the building was built. So for modern classroom technology, those kinds of things. So that's kind of just some stuff that I got out of the opening remarks that they had. I worked on battling Scope Creek, because here in Lakeview it seems like every project that we do, it goes over. And they said a lot of the problem there was you have your staff on one side, you've got in the center you should have your gatekeeper, which is your construction manager, your project manager, however you want to look at that, and then you have all your subs over here. Well, your staff is talking to your subs and they're making decisions without the gatekeeper. So that's how 95% of the time, that's how that scope creep comes up. That's how you get your overages. That's how that happens. There's no contact with your gatekeeper. So I was very strong about that because we have ran into that several times, just in the stuff that we've done here. So I thought that was very, very important and something that I thought was worthy. Let's see here. And make sure that there was a chain of command along with that gatekeeper. So your subs should go back to the general comes to the gatekeeper. That way your subs aren't overriding your general, which I've had that happen in just the last project I had. So that was important. The other, let's see, that was most of that out of there. Winning a campaign on a shoestring, I figured we probably were in that category. One school did a campaign with a $500 budget, so they were pretty darn creative with what they put out there. They used Facebook, they used the students, they used their staff in order to get that positivity out there. One thing that I did pick up on, I didn't glean a lot out of this, but the one thing that I did get was positive things on Facebook. So they ran a campaign strategy of "Did you know?" And like I said, within 100 days, every day they would put something up, "Did you know?" And it might be positive, but at least the schools were out there talking, whatever. And it might be a "Did you know?" Something that's negative, however, comma, something positive came out of that. So just keeping the school in front of people helped them. Let's see, so there wasn't a lot there other than just being resourceful with in-house managing that. The last one that I did was ABCs of bonds, and I'm going to be like Barry on this last one. They're formulas. None of y'all want to look at those formulas. So it was more the nuts and bolts of the bonds you know, so that part I'm just gonna kind of leave it where it is, cause it is kind of, it was in a little bit depth and formulas. Nobody likes formulas. So anyway, those are the things that I pulled away from it.
I will say that I've been to one school board convention before, and then this was my first bond ballots and buildings conference to go to. I was impressed how they dove right in and they got right to business. And one of the schools that was there was Harrisburg, and I believe you know.
He's a friend of, yeah, a colleague of mine, yeah.
Yeah, and they're the ones that produced the video, and they're supposedly going to have a new website, so we might check out the Harrisburg website here soon just to see that video and how that played out for them.
I'll reach out to him too.
And I think that would be kind of fun. I'm sure we could potentially have a student at some point, if they're ever interested, want to produce a video. I think it'd be pretty cool. But it was well worth my time, which I was skeptical going in. I think if we do this again, as many of the board members that can go could go, that would be beneficial, yeah, even more. So, I know it's hard to come home and listen to me give a 10-minute speech on it and get all excited about it. So, but there is hope, and the lady from Central Oregon who you got some of that information from, she offered all her help to us that we could ever.
You got a name or a card or?
I do.
something?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Well, thank you. Good report too. Thank you very much.
all right. 7.3 Superintendent Consultant Report.
I believe in Mike Taylor's OSBA. He's going to present that. Ready to do that? Okay.
Not sure about your protocol on this one, if you do it from yours works for you.
Move over here so I can see.
No. Oh, yeah. We have a number of things to accomplish this evening, but first of all, my name is Mike Taylor. I am with Next Step Leadership and Oregon School Boards Association, and we are working with your board in the selection and helping through the process of the selection of the next superintendent. So our process has been first to go out and talk with stakeholders. So I'll get into that, and then this evening the board has a number of things to do. The board has to, in a public meeting, adopt the criteria, the selection criteria, characteristics for superintendent. So this evening they will adopt those. And I'll talk a little more about how we are collecting it and how the board is going through that. Next, the board has to establish a salary range to advertise for that position. We have provided the board with a salary study, and your business manager has also taken a look at some salary projections that the board has. We will then talk about the process. The board does not have to make any final decisions about that process at this meeting, but I'm going to walk them through our recommended process for proceeding with the selection, interview, vetting process. In addition, the other decision the board has to make, the third decision the board has to make, is its final decision on advertising, what it wants to do for advertising, and I will walk them through that. So I believe that you have, and I hope you've had an opportunity to look through the materials that we provided. I had the opportunity to meet with several groups, students, teachers, staff, community. I talked with some individuals, met with your current superintendent, and also we had a survey online available. And I believe, I want to avoid just reading through the report that I gave them, but I believe that we had contact with about 112 plus individuals, either electronically, a survey online, or personal interaction. From that is what we put together, okay, along with the board policy, which describes the superintendent's job, and use that to put together the recommended criteria, the consultant's recommended criteria for the search criteria. And the board can add and subtract to that this evening. And during that survey and during that public meeting, we asked started out with three questions, okay? What works in Lakeview? Okay? What works in your schools? What works in your community? And what we do with that is that becomes the material we put together for the advertisement, for the advertising, for the promotional materials. Second thing we do is, well, in any organization, there's room for improvement. Or what's next on the agenda? Okay, so you just heard part of what's next on the agenda, and that is to take a look at your facilities. And that came up as we met with people and talked with folks. So our question is, well, what can we improve? What's next? And the third characteristic, or the third question, I'm sorry, is what are the characteristics, the attributes, abilities, traits, characteristics of the next superintendent that you're looking for? And what qualities are you looking for? That's the third question. And then, depending on how the conversations went, we asked, what are the priorities? What's most important among these? Or sometimes, for instance, around the characteristics, I ask, what is it that superintendent cannot do? What must he or she avoid? And what must they do to be successful? And what that does is give us the emphasis on those characteristics. Okay? Or if we say, what are the priorities? Okay? Then that helps us give emphasis to what we hear. Now, we have given the board all the comments, right? Every comment. But remember, those comments get posted even if it's just one person. What we looked for were trends, characteristics, reoccurrence of a common theme, right? So with that, we put together the recommendations, and I'm going to skip to those. I want to ask a question, or I need to ask one question. I will skip to those and go through those. I don't know whether you want to take these the three action items you need is one at a time, or whether you just will go all the way through everything and then do them all three together. Second question, and you can answer that one, is you also need to open this meeting up to public comment. Okay? You are required to take public comment on these characteristics. So I will give our recommendations first. You can discuss those and then open it up. You could make the case that you've already done this by virtue of commissioning us to go out and listen, but we always like to go the extra step and open it up in case someone this evening hears something or wants to say something about those characteristics. So that's up to you about when you want to open that session up, or where you want to open it up now and close it when you're ready to discuss it. So I'll ask those two questions.
Point board.
Involved.
So you can open it up to public comment, and that way you can take comments along the way, and then close it when you're done. And then the other question is, do you want to, I'm not sure about your agenda, whether you take all action in action time or whether you can take action as you go. Well, you want to take action on all three issues together, that is characteristics, salary, and advertising?
You actually have it under new business for discussion and approval of superintendent qualification
Okay.
and search criteria as a new business item
Okay.
after your report.
Great.
And then 9.2 is your approval of your
Great.
salary.
My
range.
apologies for not having seen
No,
the
you're
agenda.
good, you're good, it's fine.
Since
What
they're
she
all-
said.
Okay, great. I'll proceed then.
Since these are all concurrent, can we just take action when we go through this?
I don't see why not.
Wait for official header.
No, I think you could just roll with it.
Do you want to officially open for public comment during this presentation and then close at the end, or do you want to start a designated time or section for public comment?
I'm open for public comment.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So if you will declare that,
I don't know, the board, you guys good with
Yeah,
that?
as long as you're welcome, okay with being
I'm
on
fine.
something.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
That sounds good.
So public comment is welcome.
All right, so let me turn then, if you would, through your packets to the superintendent search qualities and qualification consultant recommendations. Okay?
What page are you on?
You know, I'm sorry, it's labeled as page 1, but it is about 2,
I don't think I have.
4, 5, it is
You
6
should have
pages
it.
deep.
Oh.
It's 6 pages deep. It's page 6, but it's listed as page 1.
Okay, thanks.
So, again, who we are, all right? Now, this material, as you approve it, okay, becomes the material that we put together in the advertisements and in the postings. The places that we post them often ask for something different. Some of them give you more characters than others. Some of them ask you specifically about a community or a school. So we have to take these and restructure them for the advertisement. These will be posted, okay, on your website, so a person will look through these. So as we go through these, your role is to either add and subtract, basically agree or disagree. But if we've missed something, we need to add it. If you think something is not representative of your community, okay, or your district, then we need to strike that. And that's the purpose of this. This is what we see. It is not scientific, all right, but it is a snapshot of what we observe. Later on, I'm going to say it also reflects your policy. Okay? So what we see is a small rural community, right? Strong parent community support for the districts, outdoor recreation, and I'm abbreviating these. Okay, a district and a community with a family atmosphere, a community that's the county seat and regional center for several activities. Your largest employers are state, local, federal government, and the school district. And then we say a terrific Lake County roundup fair. In the district, dedicated and collaborative staff of teachers working together. Small class size. Strong community support for sports programs, arts, and music. Close relationship with students and staff. The foundation awarded college scholarship opportunities. It's a strong agricultural CTE program. Some folks want to see that program stronger. You'll see it in the recommendations. But let me tell you, the fact that you have kept those programs, okay, makes it a strong program. I can't tell you how many places we've gone or that we see where there is no CTE and the CTE program, quote, shops don't exist anymore. They've been converted to classrooms or, so having one is a strong program. And I know that you just did some upgrading in that facility. So strong programs. dual credit programs, both with the community college and with OIT. School.
We work with other schools. Mark.
My-
So I said my question. We work with other schools on that too, so do we wanna add those or
Other
colleges?
institutions.
Yeah,
Yes, okay, and then let me come back to that,
okay,
maybe just quickly.
no problem.
And the last item then was the school-based arts, music, sports, and a note that they still extend down to the middle school. And that those are school programs versus community programs. Those are, we put those in there because in a lot of places, those programs have gone to community programs. And then that's a strength, we believe, to have them still connected to the school. So let's go back up on the dual credit. We can certainly add
Maybe just put many colleges and universities, cause there's a handful.
Is KCC and OIT our main ones, or do we?
They're all actually equal to
Pretty
some
equal.
extent, yeah. Cause we go through
Here's-
Chemeketa for our
here's
floriculture, horticulture.
Blue Mountains
Blue-
for some ag and KCC for ag.
And then Bobby goes through
Lynn Benton.
Lynn Benton for her medical stuff, but may eventually go to KCC now that they have the nursing. So I mean, there's quite a few.
Various maybe or.
here's how we come to this. And I definitely would say that we do KCC, OIT, and others, okay, at a minimum. If we can be very specific. If you say we work with a number of colleges the more specifics we have. So if you say we have, at one time, I ran a high school, we had the largest dual credit and dual credit program in the state for any high school. Okay? And we had a couple of colleges that we dealt with. So if we can find a specific piece to that, so we can say dual credit classes or a wide range of dual credit classes available through KCC, OIT, and others. You just want to know you've got a pretty strong program. Your kids are really proud of that program. When I met with kids, several of them learned them. So. Does that work?
I like that.
Okay.
I mean, shoot, you guys.
So that line will read a wide range of dual credit classes available through KCC, OIT, and others. Okay?
I had a comment on the very first one under community.
Community?
First bullet.
Yes.
Maybe it goes without saying, I mean, if anybody knows Oregon and southeast Oregon, and you say small and rural, maybe you don't need to put in there agricultural / natural resource based. But maybe,
Okay.
just thinking of small, rural, agricultural / natural resource based community located in the southeast Oregon.
I agree with you on that. I think, we talked about the employment opportunities, but yeah, I think there needs to be some language related to that.
The person doesn't know.
But then scraps near the California border.
Yeah, I don't know
Or
if
you
that's a
can
selling
say-
point.
Okay.
No, it's not.
But yeah, nearest detail, so that's the.
Okay, so say that again.
A small, rural, agricultural / natural resource based community located in southeast Oregon.
We were wondering too, when I bring in teachers for prospective teachers on interview,
Mhm.
one of the first places I drive them by is the hospital. Hospital's got to be close to one of our larger employees. They might have more employees than we do, but our hospital facilities, I think it needs to be in there because that takes away some of that threat of being rural.
Yes.
Because not very many rural communities have medical facilities as awesome as ours.
In rural communities.
So,
Recently upgraded.
do you wanna, can we add that as an additional bullet?
Yeah.
Okay, and how do you wanna phrase that, Lee?
I'm the math teacher. I'm not the wordsmith. We got a great hospital is how I would put it there.
Yeah, and it's a regional hospital.
Oh, okay. Home of the regional, we can just say point blank regional hospital.
And do you guys want recently
Renovated.
I
don't know, the fair popped up a couple of times all over this thing. It did.
Let's get the
Modernized.
hospital first.
Okay,
Yeah.
Maybe modernized, didn't it? I mean, there's been a lot of work.
do you see the hospital as an employer? Do you wanna add, and the reason that one of the reasons that is bulleted in here is spouse opportunity employment.
Hospital's a huge employer.
Knowing that, and I know that your administrators, that your superintendent and those fought in the legislature to keep part of the benefit packages from dual employment. And that's something we experience all the time.
Good selling point, yeah.
So that is what, and so maybe to reemphasize your hospital, we can go to,
Did you say recently upgraded hospital or recently remodeled?
I did not say that.
Recently modernized.
I wanna go up and add, the larger employers are federal, state, local government, along with the school district, and I'm just gonna add hospital.
Modernized state-of-the-art hospital.
Yeah, modernized state-of-the-art hospital.
We have all the things a lot of rural areas don't have.
Okay. Got it. All right. Anything else anything, and I'll tell you that the fair, we have here, terrific annual Lake County Fair. You know that in almost every group, somebody mentioned that you had to either, if it was characteristics or what you had to do, you need to be visible at the fair, or you had to like the fair.
It came up, huh?
It honestly came up in every group. And, I spent a lot of years in the Grand, and I just got family now, and the fair is a big deal. The Union County Fair and the Malheur County Fair, and I just have family who just moved to Hood River, and the fair is a big deal. We don't even know where the fairgrounds are in Multnomah County, Portland. Okay, so it is part of the community. And you did not show up at the Union County Fair. And if you don't, so anyhow, that's.
I think I would say Lake County Roundup and Fair.
Okay.
That's the term we use.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what we said.
So if we had
Give me
somebody-
that again.
Lake County Roundup and Fair.
just add the word
And fair.
county roundup and fair.
Got it.
Of course, we have our school programs that, to connect to the fair aspect, we have strong 4-H programs or youth programs outside school, which I think might have already covered here someplace. But anyway, I don't know how you phrase that, strong youth programs outside the school district or whatever, such as 4-H. 4-H is a very strong program. That you have fair-minded people asking you a question.
Does it, you're from Lakeview if you've been on the swim team or showed an animal at fair, right?
Or both.
Or both.
Baseball Little League is huge too.
Right, we have an awful lot of elementary youth type sports programs and programs. We could just do
Okay.
a blanket statement that says
Got
funded
it. I'll add that bullet.
programs.
Strong youth programs,
Mhm.
i.e. 4-H, Little League, etc. All right. Can always come back to that, but I'll move on then. What's next? again, based upon the focus groups and the online responses. What next is upgrade district facilities capital improvement bond, address issues related to student safety security, recruiting and retention of highly qualified staff, student behavior, safety, respect for fellow students, devote more resources for student access to mental health, establish leadership, consistency, and longevity. That is our what's next, kind of the direction. Areas of emphasis. Okay. Next item is the minimum job requirements, and this comes from your school board policy CBA. And so those are just bullet points from your policy, requiring a administrative license, successful experience. In lieu of experience, there's consideration candidate who could get a transitional administrative experience. So they got to be able to be licensed, have some administrative experience, and you have a catch-all of other qualifications determined by the board.
So this portion came up for me, I guess, in bond and the amount of repairs and safety. I would like, and this is, I'm speaking personally, some experience as a superintendent. Preferred. I mean, I hate to close the door and not say that we're not looking, but this, to me,
You want to emphasize the superintendent experience element?
So we have
That
the
is-
second bullet there.
we have a lot that's saying that we'll consider a lot of different options. And then I'm speaking in my preference, I guess, for, and especially reading in the back, you know, with some of the comments and the leadership qualities, experience preferred, in my opinion. And so I worry about this, the way it's worded. And I don't know, I mean, you're the expert. Does that really narrow it down?
My question to you is, we hired a principal, none of us did, but we hired a principal, no prior experience. It worked out pretty good. Do we want to narrow that window too tight? Because I think we're looking for a wide range of
That's
outcomes.
what I'm asking him. I just feel like there's a lot on this plate where experience is a preference. I'm not saying close the door, it's just, I'm just simply putting it out there. Like, there are a lot of sentences here that.
So, a principal candidate knows that a sitting superintendent will have rank, will have a preference. Okay? I can't say that if you put in there superintendent experience preferred, you put that statement in there, that direct.
Let's try to look for good people if you can't find who has experience. You might have trouble.
Yeah,
attracting more
I
people
can't
if you
say
don't
that that may discourage a high school principal. Your high school principal is the next likely administrative candidate, or sometimes a district office person. But a high school principal has multiple funds experience. Okay, they manage often half a district's budget. Okay, or close to it. They usually manage almost half the district's staff. okay? I mean, they basically manage half the district already. Your district office person, while they have overall goals, okay, and perspective, a district-wide perspective, they generally manage a narrow area or an element within the district. Personnel, facilities, whatever it might be. So you do not want to
Make it too narrow.
eliminate people until you see who they are. That's my only caution about narrowing that statement down. Okay, you could add a statement, and if you look through preferred leadership, see if in there are the elements of experience that you're looking for. So, building projects or building maintenance or those kinds of understandings. As we go through those, see if they're in there. Then you have the opportunity, because the next time we're together, I will be talking to you about developing the questions, which then become what you're going to hear from that candidate, and you can narrow down into a question that gets at that experience issue. Okay, so if you can keep this so that you can get the broadest pool that you can, don't put anything in here that eliminates it, unless that is a drop dead issue.
It's
From our-
not necessarily, but
But
it
if
came
you,
up for me and I
right.
wanted to
if there's a
ask.
drop dead issue where if you don't have this, we're not talking to you. Okay, end of conversation. Then go ahead and be honest about it and put it in there. But if it is, this is my preference and I really want to see this, okay, I want to keep the pool open as wide as I can to see what I get.
I just know that in the 4 years, Will has brought this district to a better place. And so I want to make sure that we continue our leadership and so we're not in a learning experience.
I think we gotta look at where we are. I mean, we're a two-way school district in Southeast Oregon. That we're a stepping stone for the superintendents at the 4A, 5A level to gain that experience. I mean, I look at our issues of what we got. We need somebody rising in their career, not settling in their career. And
We see that
so,
too,
once somebody with energy.
with the many people that we try to hire, between your job, my job, and probably your job. You know, we're not competing like Central Oregon.
Yeah.
We're in a different category, so I think it is important to keep a pretty wide
range.
range. We can always narrow it when we get to that
Right,
evaluation
right.
period.
Just wanted
It's a
to
good
ask.
point. I mean, it's a good question. And it's something that you should keep in mind as we go through the actual selection process and the questions, and how we put that together. Absolutely.
Okay.
And then the preferred leadership skills, that's again, from the online and from the focus groups. So collaborative working relationship with staff, parents, and community, highly visible and involved school and community, understands small, rural, remote school districts, has a background in classroom and other administrative experience, wants to be part of the school and community, solid budgeting skills, understands Oregon school finance, brings an empowering leadership style for staff and students, builds partnerships with families, community, local business, government agencies, brings new ideas and is willing to listen, willing to make difficult decisions and follow through, verbal and written communication skills, hold himself and staff accountable for high standards, has a knowledge and experience with capital improvement, bond passage, and implementation. Helps develop a district-wide vision and serves as mentor and instructor leader for staff. Those were the key points that we pulled from those. Yes.
Fifth bullet down, wants to be a part of this school district and community for a long time. I know that probably did come out
Uh-huh.
in some of the surveys and meetings. What is a long time? Most people would say you shouldn't ask them anything beyond 5-year plan, because after that, who knows? I'm not sure that I'm looking for a 10-year commitment in the job. I think that's unrealistic. But I would think that maybe something like 3 to 5 years, or 5 years, or at least 5 years.
Well, and even that Greg that Larry and I met with in Salem said that that's usually outdated, a 10-year commitment that far. He says, what did he said 3 to 5.
Yeah.
It 3 most likely. So that's kind of what you're looking at. So not to be disappointed if that is what happens.
Statistically, the life of a superintendent is under 3 years. Statistically. But anecdotally, what you find is that you'll find a district that gets through 4 superintendents in 2 years. Okay? Because you come in the middle, you get an interim turnover, you end up with that 3 or 4 superintendent turnover in 2 years. Okay? More stable superintendents are more like 6 to 8 years. You've got a pretty stable superintendent. You've got lifetime superintendents, okay? But I would guess 6 to 8 is a more typical lifespan. I think that 3-year statistic happens when you just district after district, you get 4 in 2 years. That's not hard to do with an interim. And so that's so when you say long term, yeah, I think you're right at that 5-year mark. Okay.
I'd be fine with that.
I think that's a commitment.
I just think somebody
Now,
read that.
whether this-
We're looking for the next 10 years, we're looking for the same person to have those shoes. I'm not sure that's a deal breaker.
So let me parenthetically put 5 plus or minus, okay, in that point. And I'll kind of talk with Greg when we work this up to have that be there. What you're going to be disappointed probably in a 2-year superintendent. Have to go back and do this in 2 years or 3 years.
Well, and I look at, just the first bullet of what's next of upgrade facilities and capital improvement bonds. I mean, if you got a 2-year superintendent, you're restarting the process.
Yeah,
and
you are. You are.
So 5 years, get through that process and well into the implementation.
Yes.
Hand it off.
I have a question.
Yes.
Bullet number 6, one right below it. Demonstrates solid budgeting skills and understands Oregon school finance.
Uh-huh.
Is that Oregon limiting the applicant pool?
No. Well, yes, but if they don't know it, they better learn it. So there's one class that if you are a foreign superintendent, if you're an out-of-state superintendent, there's 2 classes you have to take when you get to permanently get your Oregon superintendent certificate. Budgeting is one, and law is the other. I think that's right still.
That's correct. They have the finance piece usually at the law conference in December. The other piece too is they have this new Superintendent's Institute.
Yeah, and they
talk a lot about it, and they give a lot of great material. I went through the new Superintendent's Institute.
and you being 1 small and 2 rural, you have a couple of unique elements in the budget that you have to stay on. I was sharing with them before. Spent half of a tenure at one place in the legislature fighting to keep our small school piece, our small district. But you've got to get that, and it's up in the legislature almost every session. You don't know where you're going to get it. You have to be on top of that.
Okay.
You and your budget officer, both of you have to go, because as the soup, you have the only clout to go do
I just know that we're potentially going to
Yes.
approve to advertise in multiple
Yes,
states.
we will.
And I just didn't know if that was
Yes.
a limiting factor.
I think COSA does an excellent job as far as preparation in that regard, you know, it's been very beneficial.
One of the things that tells folks is they better figure it out. Okay? It also tells them if they do their homework.
Good.
So some of these, oh, this is the expectation, have I done any homework about it? Okay? So if you have a finance question, they'll say, well, I've got to, come up to date on that or whatever it is, but it tells you, it does also set expectations. Okay, so part of what this I'm looking for should set your performance expectations. You better expect them to know Oregon finance if they take the job.
And when they interview, that's going to be an interview question. You bring somebody out of state, and one guy says, yeah, and starts talking about small rural schools or timber receipts, and you bring somebody in and say, well, I haven't looked at it yet. That might be your deciding factor.
Yeah. If I haven't asked somebody
Make sure
about
you.
that.
Can we go up to the first bullet?
Yes.
Builds collaborative working relationships with staff, parents, and community. Should it be with/between? I don't know how you guys read that. I read that as they are gonna build the working relationships with staff, they're gonna build them with parents, they're gonna build them with community, but not between all those groups. And then should board be listed in there as well?
I'm gonna say yes on the board. I'll inject that in there with board staff community. Now, so is it with and among? Is that, give me a wordsmith, with and among?
Sounds great to me.
So I get your point with the with, it's one-on-one, but not among. So if you have between multiple people, it's among, I believe. Okay?
Mr. Shedd, do you agree with that?
2 plus 2 is 4.
You're the math guy. Who's the English teacher? Come on. Where's my daughter?
May I ask something?
Yes.
There was the male pronoun in there. Maybe hold himself
Oh
accountable.
my
Is that
gosh.
just common in the?
It says herself too.
Oh, it did. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, what?
Thank you, Sandy.
Yep, down in, towards the bottom, willing to hold himself/herself.
Okay.
Give me the bullet mark.
The fourth from the bottom. Starts with willing,
Him, her.
and you had it, it's correct.
Oh, I
Yeah.
got it.
I just heard the him when it was
I
raised,
see.
but I wanted to be sure. Thank you.
Yep.
What about the second one, helps develop a district-wide vision for student success? Should that be helps develop and implement?
Can do.
Just throwing it out there. And then it has to be
Does it need to be more inclusive besides just student success? We want our staff to be successful, we want our district to be successful with our facilities. everything
staff
else.
and student success.
Or district success.
District success would be good.
Okay. Do you want to keep the student in there or go to district?
For my own.
I don't keep students. That's always something
A student in
Well,
the
it could say,
district.
it could say student,
Okay.
staff, and overall district success.
Got it. All right. Very good.
It's pretty impressive.
Now, this doesn't appear in its entirety except as this is the base criteria, and then we would share that with the candidate, and we will draw from this for the appropriate advertising and keep the ideas of each bullet consistent. So that's that. Okay, so that takes care of your criteria for superintendent. So
Should we vote on that?
either however you want to do it,
Take some
organization.
input,
I'm good, as long as we got it in order.
If you want to,
Any other public comment on what we just talked about?
So I move to approve the superintendent superintendent.
Qualification.
Qualifications.
Qualities and qualifications.
Qualities and qualifications search criteria.
As presented by the
As
search
presented and amended.
recommendations as a amendment, yes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the superintendent qualification and search criteria as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Excellent.
Motion carries.
Not sure that's what my new package is.
I tried to smooth it out.
Okay, next decision point, I think, will be a recommended an advertised salary. I think on the next page, we have a salary comparison that we worked up. The top half of that lists, I think 6 or 7 schools just smaller than you, 6 or 7 schools just larger than you, and lists the salaries. Now, our information comes from a Oregon School Boards and Oregon School Administrators COSA survey for last year's salaries. So these are last year's salaries. That's why your district salary is lower than this year's. Okay? I understand your salary is actually higher than listed here, right? But this is last year's reported salary. Now, we list salary, the base salary, and whether PERS, the employees' PERS pickup, is paid for by the district or paid for by the individual. If it's paid for by the district, it shows up as a positive number in the next column. If the individual pays it, it shows up as a negative. It's parenthetical. So it shows up as a negative. Some salary studies make that adjustment, but we put the numbers in there. At the bottom, you can see the average and the mean for this group of superintendents. Okay? The next section says nearby districts. That's just the districts in your county. Now, I'm not sure about those. Sometimes, say that your small district there, that may be an adjusted part-time salary. I do not know that. Sometimes I try to find that out, but
The top one is an adjusted.
is an adjusted salary. Sometimes people submit it adjusted. Sometimes they go ahead and give the
We'll
real
switch
actual
jobs
dollars. Usually I try to figure that out, but
What are you doing here?
then at the bottom, not at the very bottom, the next one is statewide averages, and that's simply for school districts between 500 and 1,500, and that's all districts between 500 and 1,500, and that's high, low, and average statewide superintendents. Again, okay, you are projecting a salary 2 years past these numbers. Now, Janet, if you want to talk about the numbers that you provided on the bottom section.
So remember when we did this last, beginning this year, we redid a bunch of salaries. So admin, superintendent, Tandy's and myself to put on a scale to follow as certified and classified, how they go across. So that's basically what we've done, or that's what I've provided with them, 2 scenarios going across and then doing a COLA along with that. So certified and classified are roughly about 4% in between columns, and then whatever their COLA is. So if they're eligible to move across, we use the same theory on all of those administrative salaries last year. So it shows that across, and then whatever the COLA is negotiated for that year was divvied into there. So.
How does this, I guess what I'm getting lost in is it says 1920 is 109, 309, 71. 2021 is 109, 837, 78. How is that becoming different? I mean, where's that difference coming from?
Well, it could go to 113,
I think it,
You have a range there, right, Janet?
I do.
You have a range there. So,
So is the first number Mr. Cale's current salary?
Yeah.
And so then the next one is a range?
and the next one's a range.
Well, no, in July, there is a 4%, 4%, I believe.
The 4% is across. 3.5
Yes.
was your COLA last year.
Okay, but this coming July, this
2021.
superintendent is getting a 4%, or 4% COLA as of July 1 of 2020. So we would wanna
Is it
take our
4?
range and add everything for, this superintendent doesn't start till July 1 of 2020. So in theory, we should implement the COLA on that range, those salary steps that we have established for the superintendent. I just don't understand the difference in the $500 difference in the numbers.
Be nice to see the numbers too.
Well, I think if you take the current being 109, 309, 71, and I think when we started this and going back to the negotiations was since there was not an administration salary range, it was just a negotiated amount. We took their current amount and made it step 1 of the range. So Will's current would be step 1 of a 6-step range.
He'd be step 2 listed
Oh,
because
that's right. We would.
18, 19 is when we started.
Yeah, that's right. We took, prior to June or July was step 1, and then they went into step 2. So that's right. And
Yeah.
so if you take the current times 4%, so step 2 would be 113,682.
That's what she's got. Okay. So we're looking at right numbers there.
Yes. Now,
Here.
So what we need to vote on or look at though is what range we want to offer, right?
okay, so let me make one more statement, and then our recommendation is a little bit different, but it has to be your choice, okay? A high salary doesn't guarantee that you buy a good superintendent, but if your salary is not competitive, okay, you will eliminate folks. So, it doesn't have to be, off the charts up. I don't know that guarantees you anything better, but I caution that if you lowball that, it does impact the number of applicants. So that's why we do the comparison. So if we look at those small districts that are open right now, there's a good chance that a portion of your candidates will be in the pack or in the group for those other districts. Okay? And there's always 5, 6, 7 districts, small rural districts looking. So our recommendation is a salary range between 110 and 125, because we recommend a $10,000 to $15,000 difference. Now, when you advertise that, you can package that in different ways. So sometimes a candidate needs something different. Now, all your candidates, all your superintendents should get the same benefit package as your administrators. Okay? That's generally the starting ground. But they may want the salary packaged some other way. Move to TSAs or 503s or whatever the structure might be. They may want it different. You will also have some other expenses that you may want to consider. Okay? Benefit packages that are so varied, from membership, okay, to conference support, to educational support, et cetera, et cetera. Moving expenses, those are typical negotiating items when you get to them. You can work those in and out of that advertised budget, out of that advertised salary. Okay, it's all negotiable. But that first baseline number, okay, and then it depends on your experience, and if you've got a scale, which I did not say how many steps were. Well,
5.
yeah, that's, you understand that your superintendent contract is a standalone contract, okay? And then my understanding is your administrative contracts are all standalone contracts too. But your superintendent contract is definitely a standalone contract. They're not in any other group. And therefore their terms and materials are somewhat different. So that leaves you to that discussion.
So your recommendation to the board is that 110 to 125 range.
Yes, and that's kind of starts at where you are and moves up next year.
Does anybody have another recommendation, or do they tend to agree with what Mr. Taylor's presented?
I mean, especially looking at the salaries that are listed in the smaller schools.
Yeah, thanks for providing this summary.
If you guys do want to keep the same policy of harmonizing that, you can just do that harmonization based on that salary range. So you guys can establish steps in that range. So you guys can still keep with that policy, trying to keep administration with the bargaining groups. With that, once you've got the person in there, you can set up the steps kind of a similar way. Just use that range to do it. So that, I think, works for you guys. That's what the board is still wanting to do.
I mean, I think ultimately this is where we're willing to put them in to begin with. And so, like Jeff said, I think what we tried to get back to this last negotiations with all employees is some forward thinking on where the longevity bonuses or steps essentially would come in. Versus where we were with the administration for a long time was that you didn't get anything for longevity. All you got was COLAs. And it's nice to see that there's some growth within your job. And so if we bring in a person at say 125, that doesn't mean that 125 is now step 1 of their range. It could be step 4.
Yeah.
And they may only have a couple more steps essentially until they're topped out.
And you can negotiate that in that initial contract, the longest contract with your superintendent is 3 years. It's the longest contract you can have with them. And you can negotiate, fix it for 3 years, or you can step it for 3 years, or you have options in there. So that puts it back in the negotiating realm.
And that's why we did the structure that we did 2 years ago, was to get us there in the first place, because we knew we were going to have to be there at some point within the next 5. So we're actually pretty close on target.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do we have a motion?
I knew.
Oh, any public comment on that before we go to a vote?
It's good if it's comparable or competitive with North Lake.
North Lake showing 224 days or 210 days compared to 260 here. And so it may be rated out.
Yes, so let me tell you just a little bit about those days, okay? If you have a 210-day contract, my guess is you have no vacation days in that. That's, no working, no pay.
They're also a 4-day school. They're also a district that has a 4-day school.
And that's how they can reduce those days. And also the superintendent, so 210 in most districts, that's a typical elementary principal contract, okay? Because it just covers a week or maybe 2 weeks before and after school, right? So they're content not to have a superintendent for the month of July and to let them off during scheduled breaks, Christmas, spring break. A 260-day contract, okay? My guess is that most of those have between 15 and 20 plus vacation days and probably 10 to 12, well, 9 to 12 paid holidays.
Yes.
Okay? So, but that when those dates are on there, dates used to be a big, big deal to administrators. Used to be, we liked those 210-day contracts. No worky, no pay, because that's how they calculated your retirement. And then they projected it out to a full year of 240 working days. They don't do that anymore, so it doesn't matter. So many administrators have gone to 260, okay, because it accumulates vacation days. Things are changing. But those days are a little bit deceptive. You can't take them exactly at face value. They may have different value.
Okay.
It's also a negotiating item. I mean, it's also a contractual thing for how many of those vacation days, whether they can carry them over, whether you want to let them accumulate, whether you're going to pay for them or not. Those are all negotiable items. And later on, I'll talk to you about how we recommend going through that process.
Okay. Alright.
And we have-
One last thought. Do we know what Northlake is advertising their superintendent search for?
Well,
What
yeah,
is the
they're
range?
in the process.
I know, but what is the range they're using?
It's closed. I just tried to look. It's closed.
Okay.
It's closed already?
Yeah, it
They
says
must-
it says it's not taking any more applicants. I just
Oh,
looked.
interesting.
Don't they have an in-house
I'll bet you
person?
about something like that then.
I wonder what it's
I think in-house, they had about 16 applicants is what I heard.
Yeah.
Plus an in-house person. was
In-house.
behind. And I'm guessing in-house.
Mr. Kerr announced his retirement quite a while before I did, so
Yeah.
gave him an opportunity to get on it.
I just want to make sure we're not below that. So, on that salary range.
Good point. Okay, any other
I
comments?
just inquired about that today. Didn't get any information, so that very question. Okay. I'm
Hearing
sorry.
no more comment, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the superintendent's salary range as presented. Want me to put the amount
110 to 125.
in? 110 to 125.
So moved and seconded to approve the superintendent's salary range of 110 to 125 as presented. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay.
Okay, next item for a decision is advertising. Okay? Advertising over time has changed considerably. And how we advertise just in the 6 or 7 years that we've been very active in it, and certainly over long term. Long ago, you paid $300 or $400 for an ad in the Oregonian and several $100s for an ad in the Administrator's Magazine, okay? And it easily was going to cost you several $1,000s to advertise, and you put that in the budget. In today's Facebook webpage, Indeed, and LinkedIn, etc., electronic world, once you post it on a few job sites, okay, other groups pick it up. So we have for you a sheet that's 3 columns, and we used to call that local, regional, and nationwide. But the biggest response that we get for applicants, the biggest response comes from our emailing list. We email, we have a newsletter, an employment newsletter that goes out a couple of times a year, and we distribute other postings to about 45,000 administrators in the western states. Okay, and down that left-hand side in the box, you will see a list of administrators. Those don't cost anything to put those constant contact lists out. We have about a 15% plus opening rate, which folks tell us in that flood the market email list is a very, very good rate. Most of us are curious about what's open and what's out there, so we look at it. Then you will see the organizations kind of down the center column, and all of those are included in your base fee, so there is no additional charge. The two listed, Idaho School Boards and the Association of California School Administrators, both of those organizations no longer take out-of-state ads. So those costs are only for in-state advertisements. They no longer post out-of-state jobs. Okay? So they are really not options. The column on the right, then, if you wanted to go to like the American Association of School Administrators. Now that includes, that organization is mostly superintendents and district office folks, okay, across the country. But you can see that they want, what is it, almost $700 for their ad. We get, if we don't use that very often. We haven't used it in a couple of years, but we don't get much response out of it. That tends to be an organization that goes to Eastern schools who think they have to be a cut above the rest of us. Prestigious schools who want to spend their money there, in all honesty. Education Week, again, anybody who's looking for a job, they're looking on the electronic postings. They're looking in the state. They want to come to Oregon, they're going to go to Oregon school boards. Because all of the jobs are going to be there. They're going to go to COSA. All of the administrator jobs are going to be there. So if they're looking to come to Oregon, that's where they're going to go. That's where we get our applicants. So our recommendation is you have great coverage with no additional expense. I talked to Greg, my partner who does most of the back office work. I talked to him about needing to reach out to rural and small districts about that. He said there used to be an association of rural schools. And I know there used to be in Oregon because I knew those folks, and an association of small school administrators. They no longer have job posting sites, any of those. He said that he went and searched them out yesterday when I inquired about that, because somebody in the group had brought up targeting that. And as we looked at it, he said the best targeting is going to be that individual mailing, going out to administrators who currently reside in those districts. So he thought that was the best, and that's where we have gotten the lion's share of applicants. So our recommendation is to stay with the first two columns, and no need to add an additional any additional fees. I should clarify, because I used LinkedIn as an example. We do not post it to LinkedIn because when you post a superintendent job there, you get more construction superintendents than superintendents. Same with Indeed, those. But there are some specific superintendent sites. They pick their stuff up from state boards. So they like pick it up from OSBA and post it on there.
Being on the job hunt 3 years ago and working with another guy that was on the job hunt at the same time, we always just typed in the state name and school board association. There was always a link that told you where to go.
Yeah.
And so that's people that are looking for admin jobs and type in school board association, whatever state they're in, and they find it. And some states have other states' links. So I agree. That's what our guy's gonna do, or our lady, our person.
So are we not going to pay the Idaho School Board Association and the Associated County?
Because they won't take our ad.
Okay.
That means, in fact,
Just-
we're gonna take those off.
Okay.
Because, and they just started that, they just started that, so you won't get either one of those, that's why they're not highlighted.
All right.
So actually, you have no action, well, it really doesn't require any action, because you're not gonna do anything additional, in addition to what our proposal says.
Our time period was a little bit later where it's good fishing, I would be happy to go advertise.
And I don't, would you? Yeah. Okay, now, last thing that I have is to talk about a process.
We need a motion for that.
No, because you're not gonna spend any more money. I believe that in the cover letter, page 3 of the memorandum. Okay. Down at the bottom it says screening committee tips. All right. Let me talk about the process, what it is overall, and then come back to the use. Did you get it? Memorandum in page 3. Down towards the bottom, it says steering committee tips. That section is the section I'm gonna get to in just a moment. That's what I'm leading up to. The process, let me tell you about the process, and then you can see how the committee fits in there. So you have now adopted the criteria, you have adopted the salary that you need, you have already adopted a calendar. So we are ready to set everything in motion. In the next few days, we will develop the advertising and promotional materials. We send it back to you because we will ask you to post that on your website, okay? Along with the application materials and this material refined, all of that. While the job is already out there in some areas saying, oh, this is one of our openings and one of the openings around the state, some of the paid postings there or specific postings there are for 30-day periods. So we'll put those on the 15th, 17th, somewhere in the next couple of days, because your position closes March the 20th, I believe. That's the calendar. So that we'll be in there that 30 days just before your closing. Now we send out a notice that says we have this position with all the details. That will go out in the next couple of weeks. Then about 4 or 5 days before it closes, we send out another one. Okay, that goes to that complete mailing list. So targeted very specifically. And then we follow up on anybody we've heard from. So we go through that. It closes on the 20th, takes us a couple of days to put it together, and then you have spring break. So I believe that the calendar's buried someplace else. I believe it's April 1st or somewhere right in that point. You have on your calendar screening applicants. I will bring you the applicants, and we bring you all the applicants. We do not pre-screen them. We don't pre-guess that. We don't have a stable that we bring you. We bring you everything we have. Okay? We go through those, and this is where the screening committee comes in. But before I talk about the screening committee, what we will do in that is screen all the paper applicants and then choose who we want to interview. Okay? And the board does that work. The board has to make that decision. How many do we want to interview? Typically, you interview between 6 and 8 people. You can interview as few as 4, but I wouldn't do that. Okay? I'd push it higher. We've interviewed as many as 15. Okay? But 6 to 8 is typical. And I'm always going to encourage you not to narrow the field too narrow. Because in all honesty, you have a higher risk of somebody going through the process and then turning you down. Okay? And in all honesty, it happens to us. And you know that because you've had hired. They're excited, but maybe their family, maybe it's too rural for them or too far out or whatever. But sometimes that happens. So I will encourage you to keep that door open and not to fall in love too soon. All right. And remember too that in that first phase, you're only seeing the paper. And the paper and the people can be very different. So I will keep saying that. But in that first screening, okay, starting on the 1st, I think we're supposed to be done on the 6th or 7th, you are going to go from your applicant pool to how many I want to interview. Now you need to make a choice on that first interview. One, how many are you going to have? And you don't want to do that until you see the applicant pool. But you will need to decide whether you are going to require a in-person interview at that level, or whether or not you're willing to take a conference, a video conference, Skype, Zoom, whatever works well here. Okay. You also decide that if you require them to come, are you picking up the tab? Typically, that first interview, the district does not pick up the tab, but it does offer a video option, and it's the candidate's choice. Okay? I can tell you that who's the finalist, who gets the job. It's split between those people who started out on video conferencing and those who didn't. It doesn't, it does eliminate some people sometimes for different reasons, but it doesn't percentage-wise make a difference. Okay? But that needs to be your call at the time. You don't need to make this decision tonight. You need to think about it, and when we do the screening process, we then have to lock in our procedure. Then, after you do that interview, that first round interview is generally about an hour. Okay, in an hour you can ask 8 or 9 questions besides the perfunctory. Tell us about yourself and hi and bye. And at that point, you are saying, who do I want to keep talking to? You're not saying, who's my next superintendent? You're saying, who do I want to keep talking to? And then you narrow down and bring back a second group for a second interview. We will do some preliminary background checking on that group of whatever it is, 3 to 4. Again, I'm going to recommend a larger than smaller group. Okay? I really discourage you from having like only 2. I keep it at 3 or 4, maybe even above that for the come in and do the personal interview. Now, during that come to the district personal interview, mandatory is a board-only interview. That's the nitty-gritty. It's the nitty-gritty. Can I live with this person? Can they do our bidding? Okay? That's can you work? That's critical. Then the board needs to determine how far out it wants that visit to be. We call it a day in the district. Okay? It'll be, depending on where candidates are from, it might be longer than that. But then what kind of process, what kind of interaction do you want in the district? And with that, how are you going to get the feedback? Typically, at that level, when those people come to your district, obviously you want to show them your district. You want to show them your community, so you need some kind of time or opportunity to view. You want them to meet with your critical stakeholders. Okay? You want to give your staff an opportunity to interact, at least at some level. You want to give your administrators, again, this is a generalization, a chance to interview and talk. You want your key district office staff with whom they will be working closely with to have a chance to interact. And then you need a way and a time for that feedback to come back to you. Whether it's by paper, okay, evaluation sheets, or whether it's more time consuming, a personal feedback session. Then from that, you might be narrowing down. You may want to do more background checks, right? More vetting. Or you may want to visit their current district or current employment if for some reason. Now, if you do a visit to them, our recommendation is that the same person visit, if you're going to do multiple visits, the same person visit all multiple sites so that you get the same perspective. Now, depending on the board's relationship, a couple of things can happen here. The board can do all of that work, or either in the visits, it can put together a team, say a couple of board members, staff representation, or an administrator. Okay, they can put together folks to do that. Or can do it all itself.
Or we could not do it.
Or you could not do it. Okay? It all depends on how you're feeling about that candidate. And then we go there. Same thing on the reference checking. Okay, we do a level of reference checking. Okay, but the bulk of that reference checking falls to the board, because when I talk to somebody and say, hey, what about Joe Bazat's here, and I get a tone or an attitude, I can't reflect that to you. But if you, board chair, are talking to the board chair, then you have the same perspective. Now, this is another choice for the board. The board can also ask your staff to do peer level reference checks and feed that back to you. We prescribe the process. So if Lane does it, high school principal to high school principal, we give him the set of questions, okay? And he asks the same questions for every person. But a high school principal will talk to a high school principal and tell you things he won't tell me. And you know the questions it asks. And you know what's critical to you, to your need in your superintendent, okay? Or your business manager to business manager, a board secretary to board secretary. You do that peer review. And they will talk to each other, and then they feed that back to you as a part of your reference checking. But you need to kind of figure that out and see how much of that you want to do. Okay? So that's generally the process. Now, in the screening, your board members will do the screening. Okay? And I'm going to say this because there's somebody missing now. If you miss a portion of these steps, then you're out of that step until the next step. So if you don't screen applicants, you don't get to talk about which applicant you're going to bring in. But you can pick it up at the interview. So just in all fairness to the candidates. Okay? Most boards put together a screening committee, okay, understanding that the board makes the decision, but if you want to take input from another group, you put together a screening committee. And that screening committee can do the minimum, which would be screen the paper applications, give you their comments, and you can say goodbye. Most of the time, screening committees made up of your constituents and your stakeholders stay with you through the process. That is, they screen with you, okay? They will give you, we will collect their feedback from the screening. We have a way of putting that together and sharing, here's the results. We share the results by what the board chose. Here's what the advisory group chose. Here's what collectively the results were. The board talks about that, right? Right? Sometimes the board sees things a little different. 90% of the time, they are very, very close. They might be in a little different order, but every now and again there's a difference. And every now and again, some dark horse will have an advocate out there because you see something that's very valuable. And they'll make a case. And it can change that. When we give you those results, those are not mandatory. Okay? And, well, we say this, except for veterans' preferences. Veterans' preferences is a constantly shifting arena, okay, of what's to be done, and we almost guarantee to keep you out of trouble on the veterans' preferences. We have never had a real issue about it, but we have to be cognitive of it, and we have to have a defensible process. So we provide that for you in the selection process. So that's the only variation when I say you don't have to take any of our advice.
You said the word mandatory. Didn't we?
For
When we had the two lists, you just said it not very long
Yeah,
ago.
you said they weren't mandatory.
They weren't mandatory.
oh yes, when we give you, I got you. Yes, when we give you our rankings, okay, and you have these 5 people at the top of your rankings, and your advisory group has it, and collectively you have it, you can look at those and say, oh no, Joe here, this characteristic is unacceptable to us.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't, it's not. We have tried dozens of ways.
Suggested list.
This is the way it is, okay? But often somebody can make a case, yeah, but that person's been at a different job every 2 years, and there's a 3-year gap there, and that person left that job in the middle of the year, okay? It's a huge flag, but maybe there was something else that made it wonderful, okay? I could give you some examples.
Yeah.
Superintendent of the year.
Gotcha. I just
And it
was
really looks good
checking
on
that
paper,
word
but-
mandatory. So
Then you find out one more piece, and that's the end of that discussion.
Okay.
So that's why. On paper, we've had that happen where on paper it looks great, but oh wait, here's a piece of information that is a no deal. No deal.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly legitimate. So, yeah, that's what I meant. That is not the final selection. So then, if you have your selection committee, they've gone through, they've given you input on that, then when you do your interview, the board has to do the interview, that first interview, no matter whether it's video or live. Then you also make a determination there, are you going to invite your selection committee or your screening committee to observe and give you feedback? Sometimes they'll see things or hear things, and you do that. And to what degree? Sometimes you just take their input and say thank you, and you carry on the discussion. Other times it's a group discussion. That is your call. You just need to think about it so that we can lay it out. Because if you say yes, let's have a committee, let's have a selection committee, we then want to lay out what their duties are going to be, so that it's clear. So that's in there. We have a recommendation on the second page, on the last page of that, on page 4, of a typical committee, teachers, classified, parent, community members, right? Just as an idea. The 5 of you are going to be on that group, so that leaves you, 12 to 15, I think the thing says 8 to 12 people in addition. Okay? We can deal with 15 to 20 people for that committee. Another thing is that if you're doing the interviews during the school day, okay, that might eliminate your staff from being present. Okay? So again,
So I don't see administrators on
yeah, well, I don't know why I left them off.
District office too.
there.
Absolutely, I'm
Not me, the rest of them.
So I guess I had a question also for
Absolutely.
Janet. Do we have easy video conferencing capabilities?
We have.
We
Yeah.
Skype teachers. I Skype interview teachers
He
2 or 3
actually,
years.
we actually Skyped him the first time.
Right here.
And then he flew in the second time.
So we can do it here.
We can do it here, yeah.
And
We
Evan sets it all
could
up.
actually do it most anywhere. Evan just sets us up. So it's a possibility.
Okay.
you know what, sorry, I did not, and they're absolutely administrative, usually they're in their group there. One of the administrators, and I think that in your classified staff, that's a big group, depends on how big your group wants to be, you know, you do need a district office person. And then administrators absolutely in that group. And the thing is not to complicate that, don't make that complicated. Go to the group and say, give me a representative. We recommend the board not appoint them by name, okay? Because then that's your hand-appointed group. But if you ask administrators, can you give us an administrator, then they can agree among themselves who that might be, okay?
What do you say about like if sometimes we've had the union people for classified
You
or
know,
certified?
go ask the union people to give you somebody. I already mentioned it to
Okay,
both your
sorry.
association presidents,
Okay.
saying, you know,
They should recommend
you'll
somebody.
probably be asked to recommend somebody. Sometimes you want that person, sometimes they want to delegate it to someone else. Now, when you plan your day in the district, and if somebody wants on the committee and they're not, tell them, well, when we get down to the finalists, but at our first training session, actually before that, we will ask you, because we will read the names of those screeners beforehand. Your applications are online with OSBA, so all of them will be online, so we go through, teach you how to log into that. A couple of days before that happens, OSBA sends you that link and says, be sure you get into this, so you can see the applications and then go through. Then we'll go through the details of how to use it and what you're looking for and those kinds of things.
So we're looking at April, end of March, the first of April for, to have a screen.
So what I did is all the dates that you guys provided that you were unavailable, I provided those to Greg and they were gonna sort it out.
And then as far as, you said when we get down to the background checks and peer-to-peer level, reference checks, we're looking at it towards probably the end of April or so before that occurs. I guess since, not to take a lot longer, but we just heard a heck of a lot of information and we have a bunch of folks in here that heard the exact same stuff. And I got my opinions on things, but I guess I would like to hear what their opinions are on screening committees and peer-to-peer reference checks and potentially, I guess, involvement in the actual interview process. And Chris ducked out, so.
I think I would appreciate you kind of process whatever you guys are comfortable with. And I think, you know, I like the idea of the peer-to-peer piece, because I think he's right that a principal will say stuff to me that find that safe to other people, and also you know how to word questions or continue the question going on by asking the right stuff. So,
I agree with Lane that the peer-to-peer process I think is probably a great suggestion. In that I don't know that we did that 2 superintendents ago when we did that hiring. We did have a site visit or to hear, and like
Actually,
a reception.
That was not part of that process, no. There was no peer-to-peer questions. or
That's what I
anything.
thought.
No.
And
When it came up to Silver, of course, I was principal then, and, you know, the gentleman that got the position was a principal too, so I used to be an ag teacher, so my network was calling ag teachers. That's what I did. But I didn't have a set of questions or anything, I just.
yeah, it was just feelers and stuff and different things. And so I'm happy to be a part of the process and however you direct me or need me. Happy to do that.
It's any input on a person on the committee from outside the community?
As in,
Let's say president of another college.
really use your call. How do you,
I think that
does, I mean, it really is your call. Who can give you, good perspective? So one of the things that you're doing by involving people is building the credibility. Okay? So that's why we emphasize the stakeholder piece so much. But if you want some expertise, you want a more outside objective opinion or something, absolutely. So sometimes folks will, in that group, they might get the personnel director from one of your other large organizations who knows hiring. And certainly anybody who supervises people and hires people is has some background in numbers. So certainly call the president, whatever.
About another superintendent within the county. They're relying on their expertise or bringing them in.
As long as they don't have an agenda. That's the only, when you go to, not that anybody else doesn't come in with an agenda, high school principal is gonna come in with his agenda.
I'm wondering,
Fair and objective, of course, but that's the only thing. So, I met your ESD superintendent. Sometimes because they know the county, they know the resources, they know it, they're good. But I've also been in one search with a ESD superintendent, and he was on his own agenda. But the district makes that call. It's your call.
Yeah.
It's your call.
You
If you
can
trust that he's in your
You
agenda,
can get booted from the.
So,
I like that the school board takes the lead. I think that that's strong. I haven't seen it in a while. I mean, and I don't know that the visits for the school board to go, I see that as positive as I wish it would be. I really do like the peer-to-peer. I know I'm the one superintendent I called the counselor from the district. And so I do like that peer-to-peer. I think that's good. I don't know, I have mixed feelings about selection committee. So I don't know. I mean, you do this, so but I just have mixed feelings about that.
it's only, I guess I have some different opinions about selection committee and the interview process, and say that for later, but I think the peer-to-peer part of it, I think is a pretty awesome way to go with. So I think from what I'm thinking about, that's 2 months out.
yes.
That gives some time for these folks in the room to start thinking about what those questions are that you would be interested in asking your peers about moving forward in preparation to get some sample questions from Mike here. And so you're trying to put something together in 2 days. And say, hey, call these people.
Come on
What-
back, Annie.
I will mention one thing. One thing the steering committee does give you if you're going to do that peer-to-peer, because you might want to do it with peer-to-peer with your classified staff or something too, is you're going to have people not overgoing the same areas. So that does provide a more cohesive group. But then again, they can get unmanageable. So that is kind of you guys' there's pluses and minuses to doing it anyway you guys are doing it. So.
Yeah, the first thing that you want is that, to determine, whether or not you're going to use that screening committee or not, because those names and people, we need a couple of weeks before, that 1st of April, date. That's the first group, so that we know how you utilize them can be a follow-up decision, other than what you need to tell them with their time commitment is going to be. That date, I just closed my calendar, that first screening date, April 1, that is virtually a mandatory meeting because they have to go into executive session and they have to understand that executive session piece and the confidentiality. And I think that we didn't explain, but you are hoping that a group, a good portion of your candidates are working right now, and that some of them are superintendents. Let me tell you that as a superintendent or even as a building principal, it is not good for you to be looking for another job with your staff or your constituents, especially if you're a good one. Okay, and so they don't appreciate their name out there if they're one of 20 and they're not even going to be considered. Okay? Now, when you get down to your finalists and that final 4 or 5 interviews that you're doing the backgrounds on, then we tell them all bets are off. You're good. But now they're down to 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, so they got a 25% chance of doing it. They're willing to risk burn up whatever capital it takes to in their community, their school, or whatever. So that is an important issue. And the rumors start early, and we're really strong about this confidentiality piece. So that meeting not only tells them how to see the applications, what we're looking for, what to do, how to turn it in, but the confidentiality piece. How you utilize them beyond that, and in the interviews, etc. You still have some time to figure that out.
Thank you.
Anything else questions I can answer? Certainly, we will update this and send it to Janet and to your board secretary, and see that I captured what the gist of this is, and wordsmith it so that we agree that that's what you said, and then go from there. And then we'll put together the materials, send it back to you to post on your website. It should all be there, in addition to whatever's already there. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Excellent discussion.
Good, thank you.
Input. All right, moving on. We're going to go to 8, old business.
I have one, Mr. Chair.
New business, 9.1.
You took care of that.
I did that. I wanted to-
9.2. Okay. Okay, got it. 9.3, credit recovery agreement.
All right, this is between KCC and us. This is a yearly deal that we've had with them. So we have our alternative education class, school, etc. We claim the ADM on those kiddos. KCC offers a little support to us, and they claim FTE to them, and we get half of that FTE. Now, it used to be in the prior year 1,000 per each FTE. This year it will be 1,166 per FTE, so it did go up for us. I'm just seeking approval for the agreement that we have with them.
And I reviewed it, and we've made some tweaks that make it better for what we're actually doing, so I'm very comfortable with you guys executing this agreement.
And those tweaks were actually pretty minor. They wanted me to bill them on a quarterly basis on an estimated, and I told them I didn't have enough time in my day to do that, and then reconcile it back up to actual, so once a year. You need to pay me in 30 days. How about that? So I'm always a year behind. We've accumulated 38,000. This last year from 18-19 is 35,000 that they owe me for. So this year will be a little bit less, I believe. Not as much, just due to the program changes.
Okay.
So we made those tweaks in there as far as how we bill.
Any other discussion?
I move to approve the credit recovery agreement as presented.
So moved and seconded to approve the credit recovery agreement as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries. 9.4, new school bus purchase.
Okay, so we have in our budget to purchase another school bus, which we all know we've gotta have new ones by 25, for the most part, 2025. We have it on the books for 115,000. We do have a Volkswagen settlement that, we are eligible for actually 2 buses. But in talking to them, we can, activate one of those and then activate the second one at a later date, so in the next fiscal year, for example. So it's 30% or 50,000, whichever is lower on the purchase price. So the on the whole, it's 138,400, and so that puts us at 41,500 to recover. It's all part of that Volkswagen settlement that they have. So we're actually out of pocket 96,800 at the end of the day.
So that's almost $20,000 different than what's in our budget. So,
Less, better.
Yeah, it's better.
So
Yes.
will that 20,000 carry over?
So what we'll end up doing is it'll be a budgeted amount. So keep that in mind. It's 115 budgeted.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is probably relook at that, given the fact that this bus purchase versus our last bus purchase is a little bit different also. So that 115 was based on that, but this is also a bigger bus. We probably need to stay with bigger buses going forward and not short ourselves on seating. So we'll probably adjust that budget amount. So keep that in mind. It's a budget amount.
Comment?
Is this bus going to be a route bus, designated as a route bus or a travel bus, or what's the
So
purpose?
number 2 will stay as a travel bus for right now. We don't have it on route. The requirements on this was a certain year of bus. So bus number 3 is one of those buses that
So it has to replace a bus that's
We
older
have to
with
replace-
mileage or something.
yeah, we have to replace that bus because it's that particular year,
Okay, makes sense.
which means that number 3 bus we will actually bore a hole in the engine and be gone with it. It's part of our requirements.
The reason I asked is if we ever had the opportunity to buy a bus and it would replace a travel bus, I would like to look at seat configuration and add 2 inches of legroom.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd
Let me
be
get right after that one.
Coach's recliner?
No,
I mean, you
I
know,
don't
put
coach
a TV in it
But
too.
I would just, what happens is we get on these travel buses and we travel, which we do that, we know that, but the problem is when we have our athletes that are 5'10" or bigger, it's hard to put 2 in a seat. And if we could have 2 more inches of room, it makes a huge difference by
Well,
putting
and
2.
this is one of those buses that's bigger and at the maximum legroom that we can get it to.
Okay, perfect.
So, I mean, unless they come out with a,
Because most school buses, they make for elementary kids. That's what it feels like. And I get that because that's the purpose of a bus. But if we're going to use it for a travel bus too, it'd be nice to have some room. High school kids are big.
well, and my,
For 45 hours.
my bus too is my biggest
Get out
bus
stretch.
that will hold the most kids. And so what ends up happening, that's what I gotta send on your on your travel, your next best bus, and that I trust to go 4 or 5 hours,
Alright, yeah. Okay.
right?
Just asking.
Nope.
I was able to design a bus at a last district, and it was a good process.
Remember when you went to high school, did they have a Hawker bus during your time?
It just went away my freshman year.
When I was at school, we had the Hawker bus, which was beautifully painted. I think it was an old Greyhound bus.
post
Yeah.
they bought.
Reclining seats, the whole works.
Yeah.
We got the nice little, wow.
We'll just
So
send all
anyway.
our old buses to Lane and he can scrap them and piece them together.
That's all that.
All right.
Make one for Burning Man.
Any
I
other
just need
discussion?
approval to order this bus.
I move to approve the purchase of a new school bus as presented.
Second.
So moved and seconded to approve the purchase of a new school bus as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 9.5, formation of the LHS Clay Target League.
Mr. Rose.
So I've met, actually, both Will and I have met with Dave McCarty, a local guy here in town, who brought this forward to us probably 4 or 5 months ago, a while ago, and he was looking for a way to plug into the youth in the county, and this was something that he had a passion about. He's an avid hunter, a bird hunter, and just with going through this process and his spreading the word, I know that we actually have a couple of gentlemen here tonight that are interested in helping out with this. Mr. Sturba and Mr. Greer, district co-worker, has also mentioned that he's interested in being part of this as well. And so it's got some interest by people in the community. He is I don't know if you've been able to read through that whole proposal there, but there is a United States of America Clay Target League as well as an Oregon State High School Clay Target League. And so it's not something brand new. It's well established. There are established bylaws and rules, safety rules and expectations. And so a lot of his documentation has come from that. In fact, do I recall right, Lane, that you know one of the coaches in the Rogue Valley who's had some pretty good success? Is that right?
I met him at the Elks Lions senior, the guy that spoke at the senior luncheon. He was he was a coach and he has a connection to the Thorntons, I believe.
Rotary Lions.
Rotary Lions, Elks Lions, Rotary Lions, at Elks, Rotary Lions at Elks. But anyways, he spoke very highly of it. So, and if you read it, if you read about it, and it pops up in the coaches magazine that we get, the AD coaches magazine. It's a growing sport.
It is a growing sport. Yeah, it's grown by a lot, and I think Dave, when we last talked last week, said something like 10,000 high school competitors competed in Michigan or Wisconsin in their last state competition, and so it would be a countywide group, right? So to include North Lake and Paisley. He's already contacted someone in both towns and both schools.
I've talked to both superintendents and they've signed on to it.
And so it's got some support. It's got people that are interested in this, and you know it's been established nationwide, statewide. So it's not something that he's just creating.
My understanding is the only track course in the county is in Paisley.
Yeah, so that's
That's
what
true.
it is.
And this is like the equestrian team, right?
Club, yeah.
Club. It's a
Exactly.
club.
Yes.
What track course, what is it, an acre? Need an acre? 2 acres?
It might be. I don't know what it
I
would
mean,
require.
there's one crammed into Medford,
Right there,
front of
yeah.
Central Point, right by the airport.
If it's a track course, you don't need very much. So I don't know what the size is. But what is it? 5 stations, 5 shots.
It's 5 stations, and you have 5 shots
Shots.
at each station.
So it's a 25
25 for a round.
round.
And competitions can be done on site, virtually. I think was the word you said, right? So they'll compete at Paisley and then send their scores to compete against other schools, like Medford, for example, that would shoot there. But once it gets to the state level, then you need to travel to that competition.
So would the idea be that our participants would be going to Paisley every day, or would we try to find something here locally to?
Paisley's the place. I don't know what frequency they would practice. I don't think they've gotten that far to say, all right, this is. I think it depends on how many people, right? How many adults and volunteers they have, and how many kids are interested. But yeah, they would go to Paisley for the practice.
Think about like our equestrian club. All of them practice on their own. There's some what I call organized there at the enclosed barn on the west side. A lot of them just practice on their own and have to travel to Redmond every week. So we're having these kids practice on their own, whether their dad's throwing clay pigeons for them out in the back 40 or they're driving to Paisley and actually shooting at the station. Would be no different than what we're doing with our clubs right now.
Ski team goes to Mount Ashland every weekend.
And the idea is in theory, we'll be shooting 100 birds a week. So 50 birds will be a practice session, 50 birds will be for your score. Where we've kicked around because we know some kids are going to be playing baseball for track, but want to do this as well. So having shoots on Sunday afternoons, so parents can go out and support their kids as well. But then maybe a Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon as well. So 50 each day. There may be some kids that just have to shoot all 100 in one day because of schedules, whatever those may be. But ideally, we'd like them to shoot twice a week.
My question earlier was about liability. They carry their liability.
There's a fee that we pay, that every participant will pay, and that goes towards their liability insurance, liability purposes. So there'll be no liability on the school district. Essentially, we're just carrying the Lakeview Honker name. So the Paisley kids and the North Lake kids, they're going to be wearing, if we have a blue T-shirt with a honker on it, that's what they're going to be wearing because we've established our club. You know, if they want to break off next year and take on their own club, then they'll have their own T-shirts or whatever the case may be.
I discussed that with the superintendents too, and they were fine with that.
So I guess my next question I have is about if you are part of this and you have your shotgun and do you go home and get it and then go shoot, or is it in your vehicle at school? Or?
It does not touch school property because otherwise we violate the Gun Free Schools Act, and their application materials later on actually do that. And everybody signs a warning that if you do this, you're going to be expelled, which is federal law. So that's very, very clear. That was one of the things I was happy to see with this materials is that people are warned that guns do not come on school grounds. They can't. So that's covered.
And when we travel, we won't meet on school grounds. We'll ask the kids to go get their shotguns or have their parents meet us, maybe in Memorial Hall, maybe in the town parking lot next to Feather Your Nest, somewhere. So it's not going to have anything to do with school grounds.
That's a good point. See an education process there.
I just, if I had a question, we give some
They
money
won't be.
to the school clubs, don't we? What do we give the other ones?
500 on the clubs. So that's either in some capacity of a supply ski team. We actually executed. They lost their liability insurance personally, or not personally, but as their group, I should say. So they had to go out and get it themselves, and it's very expensive. So we pitched in that 500 to help them out there.
And the equestrian.
And the equestrians never really asked us for anything.
But I think we made it.
They've got the booster, the equestrian.
So I wanted to say Stephanie wanted to make it equal at one point.
And it is, but they gotta request it, as far as being reimbursed or something.
And I'd be more than willing to speak for the boosters that they would support this club, as long as this club was willing to support the boosters in some sort of event, whether it's working concession stands or, we picked up the Derby and the fairgrounds. So it'd be very similar.
Jake or Kevin, you have there's some financial support from the various hunting organizations for this, isn't there? Like Ducks Unlimited and things like that. That's why I was led to believe it.
So Dave is confident. He's talked with other coaches around the state, and he's confident that there are funds out there from groups like that are willing to encourage that kind of sport, right? Encourage the sport of hunting as well, and not just target shooting. And I will say too, Dave wanted to be here tonight. He's got somewhat of a family emergency, but so he's done his research and he's reached out, and other coaches say that they're fully funded just by
donations,
groups and donations.
And it's not all financial support we're looking for. We're looking for donations for eye and ear protection, shotgun shells, clay pigeon purchases, those kinds of things. So it's not all about the financial money. It's about what else can we donate, some of the materials. This first year, we're probably going to be paying for a lot of that out of pocket. We being the kids, and the parents. But we're too late to get. We're too late right now to apply for other of the grants that are out there, and there's a lot of grants. I know the school from Central Point doesn't pay anything. Their kids don't pay anything to shoot because they have grants available. They wrote grants and received grants. So their kids don't pay anything. As we're trying to get the wheels in motion, we see the cost per student going down.
So this would be starting this spring.
Springsport.
So we could, if we wanted to support this club as we do the other clubs, we could either get in the budget or look for.
Most likely it was
Booster.
booster.
Most likely they go to booster this first year for sure, and then we could build it in next year as an admission.
Next year is in 2021. That's good, I guess what it's
Yeah.
entering budget seasons.
I just heard more additional costs as the first year starting it up and late in the season to get going for grants and whatever, so.
It would be a booster grant situation. Likely, yeah, they would request that kind of thing.
Okay, any other discussion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve the formation of the Lakeview High School Clay Target League for the 2019-20 school year as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the formation of the Lakeview High School Clay Target League for 2019-20 school year as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries. Announcements.
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Next board meeting agenda items.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and have a work session, start talking instructional calendars for 2021. ASB building principal and athletic director reports, and I'd like to add to that, I didn't get it in handy to be on here, but I'd like to do another SIA report, state investment account, as far as the data that we've gathered so far from the online survey to our public meeting last night. Where the process is so far.
When's our next meeting?
I believe it is the 26th.
Local service plan from Jack Thompson will be on there too.
Say that again.
Local service plan,
Okay.
new business with Jack Thompson.
Got three
The
policies.
11th is when we need to retouch for the
Here too, correct?
search.
April,
Around three policies.
is it
I
April
think they would
first,
be
March
Probably the
1st?
Well, he wants
Yeah,
to
we already
have
had a
a
work session for the construction calendar.
I think.
So what after that?
He only wants it a couple weeks prior to getting April.
All right, adjournment. It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion